Hey everybody, this is Brian from Bearable Traders, and this of course is the weekend video, but you'll see I'm not in my office. I am at the BBT TEDx Elevate conference in Vancouver, and we're going to do meetup, have a lot of interesting speakers to see and hear, and of course we'll be trading live Monday morning. But of course, this is the weekend video. We'll take a look at what happened last week in the markets and take a look ahead then and see what we got coming up next week. It's probably going to be another roller coaster ride, so hang on to your hats. Okay, and so let's start out by looking at what happened last week. As we always do, man, it was a roller coaster ride in the markets this week. We gapped up strongly on Monday, which is what I had anticipated, but by the time we got to Wednesday, some of the sellers came back into the market, and Friday really laid into the selling. They took control after we got that PCE data that showed inflation ticking back up, while the consumer sentiment number that came out at 10 a.m. was at an extreme low, not seen since quite a few years ago, and the market just started to roll over big time. And most of those losses you see here on the indexes, pretty much the result of Friday. Those were where most of the losses happened. So consumer defensives and energy sectors have finished up the strongest. Communication services, technology, the technology sector, the Mag 7s, they were the ones that really took a beating here this week. A 2-year and 10-year treasuries pretty much flat on the week. So was the dollar. Dollar was flat on the week. And Bitcoin's just been hanging around this 84,000 and change range here. So not much movement in Bitcoin. So that was your week in review. And it was a fun one for the traders that were able to be on the right side of those trades. All right, and this is where I do a quick plug for my books that are available on Amazon in those various forms, hard copy, or audiobook, if you want to check them out, How to Swing Trade Profiting as an Active Trader, and my latest book, How to Trade Options. If you're already a trader and you want to explore options, it's a good book to pick up and check out that financial instrument. So that's it. Let's go and take a look at some of the indexes here. Okay, so let's start out by looking at some of the indexes here, and you can see what happened during the week. We had a nice gap up there Monday and had a nice rally going Monday. Tuesday kind of stalled out. Wednesday rolled over, not so serious, kind of maybe a little bit of a pullback after all that exuberance, but Thursday a little bit lower, and then Friday, of course, the PCE data and consumer confidence came out, and we just turned and dropped big on Friday and lost the 200-day moving average on the Dow. You can see here this was this area of consolidation that we kind of churned in just before breaking out Monday, and we came back and pretty much engulfed that entire churning session, which maybe there'll be some support here, but again, we may come down and retest this low from mid-March. And let's take a look at it on a weekly. We're still sort of struggling, maybe churning in this area where there was prior support here and here. And now it's maybe becoming resistance, and we're sitting right at a moving average on the weekly. Let's take a look at the Qs. Again, same story. I'm not going to keep repeating myself, but you can see here the churn here. We actually really did engulf that whole area of churn and came back down, came very close to retesting this prior low here in mid-March. And so we'll be looking for maybe a little bit more downside, but hopefully some support. If not, we may be heading lower. So you can see here we engulfed the previous week with that weekly candle, and there's where your next level of resistance or support here is down around 448 on the Qs. So again, the SPY, same story, churning, broke up, and then really just engulfed that entire area where we churned, and now coming down, maybe retesting this low next week. So really going to be event driven, and whatever announcements start to come out of the White House next week with regard to the tariffs. So here's your next level of support right here, kind of where we came back and retested this area. and they may be down here if we actually continue to sell off. Again, depending on whatever the news flow is. Same story with IWM here, maybe retesting this low, and we'll see if we can hold there. Again, highly dependent on what's going to news flow. VIX popping up, of course, fear index that went out pretty close to the high on Friday. Dollar really didn't do much, and that was because treasuries didn't do much. So you can see there the dollar pretty much flat on the week. And Bitcoin trading around 84,300. So again, seems to be kind of bouncing around in this range here, somewhere between this 84,000 and 87,000 right now. So watch for a break from one of those levels. And that's it for the indexes. Okay, let's go over a few trades I did last week that I mentioned in my swing trade letter. I did sell some 215 calls. Apple in the previous week, held them. We had the nice gap up, which I was expecting, and sold them or bought them back. I guess I sold the calls down here and then bought them back at a very much reduced price, and that was a nice trade. And still would have been good to hold right to the end there, but I didn't bother because the value had dropped so much. So that was one trade, and then AMD was another one. Sold the 100 calls because I like this little gap up here. Of course, we got that big gap on Monday, and again bought them back at a very reduced rate, and so got that trade in. It was nice. Again, if you want to learn about trading options, those are a little bit risky trades. You have to be prepared to own if they do drop below the area where you're selling them. But I kind of felt like Apple's been really, or AMD's been really hanging in here despite the market sell-off. So I thought it was pretty solid level to go short the puts on. And yeah, so that was it for trades this week. It was really a difficult environment to swing trade in. Okay, so what I'm going to look at next week, like I said, it's a pretty difficult environment to swing trade in right now just because there's just so much headline-driven news that pushes stocks here and there and everywhere. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. Maybe we'll get some more certainty next week, but a couple I'll be watching. The tech sector really sold off heavily, and so maybe it'll probably come bouncing back if we get any form of good news. Here's Apple is one of the ones I'm watching. It's been relatively performing fairly well. Didn't really drop back as much as the rest of a lot of the tech sector did. We did fill this gap here from from Friday to Monday. And so we have filled this gap. Typically, that's where we find support. So I'll be watching Apple, possible move higher if we do get some resolution. Meta's right down at this 200-day moving average. Again, right down near this area we bottomed out in middle of March here, and potential for it to bounce back up as well if we get some possible news. PLTR again kind of hanging in there. Even though it's been pretty choppy, it hasn't really dropped as much as sort of the rest of the sector. So trying to look for things that aren't reacting as much as some of the other stocks. So Tesla again really didn't sell off hard. It sort of held this, has been holding above, and it's into these moving averages. So maybe we'll get some news on Tesla one way or another, so I'll be watching that one as well. Possible, if it does continue to sell off, it could potentially come down in here to 50 to fill this gap. So if it does drop more, I would be watching the 250 level for significant support. And that's kind of what I'm watching for next week. Okay, so this is my high-level assessment as we wrap things up here for this video. Friday, we, as I've already mentioned, completely blew through this area we spent time churning, consolidating in. Before that break higher on Monday, that was a week before. So sellers were in complete control on Friday, and we went out near the lows of the session. Next week, there's a good chance we will retest the lows from mid-March. We almost got there on Friday. Wednesday 2nd, as I mentioned, is going to be there, President Trump's calling Liberation Day. So it's what we find out what additional tariffs will be added, reduced, removed, and this is really again going to be another week that's going to be really news and event driven, and markets will respond accordingly. Markets and business do not do very well in uncertainty. So again, we can expect a very volatile week. So let's take a look here what we got. The Dow, there's your levels, support and resistance. And for as far as economics events go, we do have a bit of stuff coming up. Employment's going to be in focus this week. You've got ADP employment, 8:15 on Wednesday. And again, as I mentioned, the second Liberation Day, that'll be those whatever announcements come from that. And then, of course, 8:30 Friday, we get all the unemployment and hourly earning wages reports, etc. And then Fed Powell is actually speaking at 11:25 on Friday. But so that may add a little bit more spice to the market if there wasn't enough spice already. And earnings for this week, nothing much really. This is a very quiet week leading up to next week where we will start full swing into earnings again. Just feels like we got over that last earnings session. So coming up again. That's it, everybody. We will be trading at the meetup, the Bearable Traders meetup on Monday. I don't believe we will be able to do stuff on YouTube. We will have some coverage in the room, but definitely we'll be back online on Tuesday morning. So looking forward to a great weekend, TEDx, and a whole bunch of really inspirational speakers at our meetup this year. It's going to be awesome. If you're not going to make it this year, maybe you might want to consider next year. So have a great weekend, everyone. I know we're going to have a great time, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.